Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you've been following along with this series, I apologize. I've not put out a video in the past couple of weeks. I've been extremely busy. I'm going to make that up to you today. I'm going to talk about the most important thing you're going to learn this entire series. This is the sort of the meat and potatoes of programming. We're going to talk about the loop. And the loop is just extremely useful. There's two types of loops we're going to learn about today. We're going to learn about the for loop and the while loop. Now, they both have slightly different use cases. We're mainly going to focus on this one because this is extremely important. It's not necessarily hard. It's just so useful. Let's just jump right into it. You're going to feel like you're going to feel more like a coder here today than any other video prior. So we have, let's do this. We have an array, and it's got some numbers in it. Geez, Alex, can you type today, man? Can you do it? Now, I want to do something to each one of these values in this array. Let's do it. Bear with me. I'm just going to write out the whole thing, and then I'll go over it. For each item, we're going to say of, not in, and there's a reason why. We'll talk about it later. For each item of array. All right. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so what we've essentially just said here is for each item in array console log the item. So we're going to run through. It's going to assign item to a value in this array. It's going to run through. It's going to do some code. You can do anything inside of here. You can do anything you want. You can put another loop inside of here if you wanted to. You can do anything. But for now, we're just going to print the item. And this value of item is going to change for each value in that array. Watch what happens. When I run that, I'm going to get 1, 2, and 3 back. It just printed out every single item inside of that array. That's pretty cool stuff, huh? Now let's quickly jump over to the while loop. The while loop is a tad bit different. This will continue to run as long as the condition inside of these parentheses is equal to true. So if I wanted to make an infinite loop, which is a legitimate thing, I'll just do while true. And that is an infinite loop in programming. While true, and since true is always true, it's just going to keep going. So be careful when you're doing stuff like this. Now, although an infinite loop can be a legitimate thing, there are also times when you could break things because, well, computers' resources is not limited, or it's not infinite, excuse me, it's not infinite, so you could potentially break things. I don't think we're going to break anything here, and I'm not going to run it for very long, but that's just something to keep in mind. Look at that, it just keeps going. As long as it's true, it's just as fast as the CPU can print it out. And you're not going to break anything severely on a computer, but you might run out of memory or something like that, and it'll just crash the program. So just don't run it for too long. But this would be a legitimate case, like for instance, if you wanted to make a program that just ran until somebody stopped it, which there are tons of programs like that in the real world. That's sometimes how you could approach doing that. One way of doing it. So let's give a more practical use case. So we have a value and it's equal to 0. And remember, this is going to keep going as long as something is equal to true, right? So let's just keep doing this as long as value is less than 10. As long as 10 is greater than value, I'm just going to keep this loop going So we're going to say value equals value plus 1. We're going to add 1 to the value each time we go around. And we're going to console log that value at that moment. Going to clear that. And by the way, if you want to clear that screen, you hit Control. On a Mac, it'll be Control. Excuse me. On Windows, it'll be Control L. On a Mac, it'll be Command L. No, actually, it'll be Control L on a Mac too, I believe. Yeah, Control L. Either way. My OCD there. So look, we ran that. It ran 10 times exactly. As soon as value hit 11, it stopped the loop. So it ran through. It added value to value. Went right back around, checked to see if value was still less than 10, and then kept going. Once this was 11, it just broke the loop. Just broke it. Which, by the way, you could break the loop manually if you wanted to, just by doing break, just like that. So if I write break right here, it goes through one time. I could also do this. I could write continue, and that'll just skip this, so it'll just never hit it, which would actually cause an infinite loop. Again, yeah, it just will never stop. Just something good to know. All right, that's all I'm going to focus on for the while loop for now, because the for loop is far more useful, and there's still more things we have to talk about the for loop. But that's the while loop. I'm going to keep that just commented down here. Okay, let's talk more about this. So now we've talked about objects and arrays at this point, and there are different ways of looping through arrays versus objects. So that's what I want to talk about here real quick. Now, as we talked about, in an array, if I want to get a value, if I wanted to get the first item in that array, I would do array 0, because an array is indexed, and that index starts at 0. But in an object, we create our own index. So the index is not going to be 0, it's going to be this and that. That's the index. That's how an object works. It's like an array with its own custom index, right? So there are different ways of going about iterating through objects versus arrays in every language. There are conceptual differences in iterating through each one of those types of things. Arrays are usually more straightforward, but objects can also be a lot more useful, especially if you want to, have something with a key value pair. That can be extremely useful. So I use this word of when I was dealing with an array, but that is not going to work if I try to use an object inside of that. It's just going to break. It's going to say object is not iterable because it's not. But if I use the word in, it's going to change something. It's not going to, look, it's going to loop through the index of this object. And then, now we have access to all of it, right? I'm going to show you why. I'm going to call this the index. I'm going to call this the item inside of here. Equals obj, and then we can just grab that item, using index, not item. We're going to use the index to grab the value from this object. So check this out. Do index, item. Look at that, this and that. So I just wanted to show you that there are conceptual differences between looping through an object and an array. And that is something you have to deal with in every language. And I'm going to show you how you're going to deal with loops in every language. JavaScript is, it's as usual a sort of happy medium, right? It's not too hard. It's not too esoteric. Python will probably be the easiest when it comes to loop today. Loops in Python are just so easy, so straightforward. Let's do this. We have an array. Oh, they call them lists in Python. We have a loop for item in list. It's just that, well, I thought it was just that simple. Hold on. Oh, it was just that simple if you spell it right. So it's just that simple. 2 lines. Look at that. 4 item in list. Now to do some of the things, like if you wanted to add an index to this array, you could. It will enumerate it. And then you could do this. You could do index item. And I wonder if it'll let you put it in here. We could do this. Yeah, just like that. And then if I had an object or a dictionary, as they call it in Python, now this is just something you have to remember when dealing with dictionaries and iterating through them. You have to just use the word items. This is a function that's inside of Python. It's a Pythonic function. And this essentially just allows you to iterate through an object. If you didn't have it, it would break. Cannot unpack non-iterable int object. Oh, well, hold on. We're using the wrong one. We were using the list, not the dictionary. Too many values to unpack. This is a very similar error than the one that we got in JavaScript where it says it's not iterable. It's just not iterable. That's all it's saying. But if I add items, suddenly it is. It's just something to remember, and that's how it works in Python. Ruby is going to be the weirdest one. Ruby has its own syntax entirely, but it's not hard. It's just different. Array, each, do. We're going to assign the item inside of these pipes. I know it's weird. Bear with me. We have these pipes. We're going to call it item. Come on, type Alex. No! Bear with me, I'm having a stroke. Okay. There we go. That easy. It's just a weird syntax, right? Array, each, do, and then we're going to call each one of those items. If it was an object or a hash, as they call it in Ruby, very simple. I'm just going to change this out. And now, I can just do index. This is also sometimes referred to as the key item. Boom. Just like that. You just add a comma, and then you can add the key there, or the index as well. PHP, it's pretty similar to JavaScript. Where you have to have a semicolon there in PHP. For each, instead of for, it's for each, the whole thing. And it's backwards in PHP. For each array as item. So instead of saying for item in each, we're saying for array as. Have to have a semicolon there. 1, 2, 3, all one line. Doesn't even give you a line break. It's old. Old. PHP is old. All right. Now in PHP, there are objects, but you don't usually use them. A lot of times you'll use associative arrays. We'll just call this an object, even though it's technically not. Has key item. And if you use this arrow syntax, you can access both of them. That. Look at that. Easy as pie. All right, before we get too far along this video, I know we're probably getting up there in time already. I want to talk to you about something very important. So you can put anything inside of a loop, including another loop if you wanted to. And there are some legitimate cases for doing that, but it can cause problems in your code. I'm going to show you why. So we're in Python. It's going to be easiest in Python just because loops are easiest in Python. So I'm going to talk to you about how for loops can create exponential problems. If you forget about the math involved here, you can run into some issues. So let's say we have a list of, so we're going to go up to 12. Now, how many times do you think this is going to run? Oops, no vars. Now we're going to call this count. How many times do you think this is going to run? We have 3 loops here, 12 items. Probably bigger than you think. Print. Weird spacing issue there. Ooh, 1,728 times. For 3 loops with 12 values, that's exponential, isn't it? That's a big one. It goes off the thing. Can't even go to 0. So that is why you have to be careful in using loops inside of loops. There are legitimate reasons to use 2 loops. Let's say if you're trying to cross-reference one array with another array, legitimate reason there. But once you start getting into 3, 4 loops inside of a loop, there's probably a better way to go about handling the situation, because you're gonna start slowing down the code. It's gonna be it can get insane. You know, it is cool though. There's a whole science around this. They call this the big O notation. That's something you should probably look into. Look at that. That took a second to complete. 19,000. I'm going to run that again. We're going to see how long it is. That took a second, 20,000. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right, guys. Hope you learned something. Like I said, this is the most useful thing you're going to learn this whole series. This is how you become a programmer right here. This is the meat and potatoes. All right, guys. Thanks for watching.